I would love to make a transition here from discussion of why we have these challenges to what do we do about these challenges? And Baris, I'll let you pick whether it's internal alignment, trust, lack of voice of the customer, or all put together. What do we do? We're not doing the job that we fully want to do if we're not aligned. We don't have the true voice of the customer the way that we really, truly want. And there's a massive trust issue that's rampant throughout the industry. Why do we think the B2B buyer is waiting longer and longer and longer to talk to us? Right? That's been so well documented. It's because they're not trusting. That's what it comes right down to. What do we do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've got a lot of thoughts. So I think it goes back to, I strongly believe in the alignment first. I think, if your marketing and your sales department and your customer success and your product team do not agree on what type of customers do we want and what kind of customers we don't want. And we need to look at, I think data doesn't lie. If you're a $5 million company or a $2 million company or a $50 million company, $100 million company, you're going to have data proof to tell you where's your churn, what type of customers that churn is coming from, what type of good quality revenue and what type of customers that's coming from. And I think you can answer a lot of questions by just looking at the data, number one. Number two, by asking and trying to get a very healthy conversation with all of your leaders in the room, and you lock them in the room and nobody leaves. I've seen this play out over and over and over again. When the CEO, right, has an idea of what a good customer looks like, and your CPO and your CTO doesn't, and they don't, right? You literally need to lock them in a room and hash that out, right? Because if you don't get to the bottom of that, then of course, trust with your community and everything is going to get broken because your executives cannot even decide on what a good customer is. It goes back to your earlier question. As a CRO, there are deals and it shouldn't be a gut feel, right? I mean, Rhiannon, you probably see this every day. Like there's a deal that comes in the pipeline. It's really not an ICP. It's snuck in, right? And it looks good because it's going to save the quarter, right? Nobody says this is going to be a bad customer, right? Like everybody kind of knows it's not an ICP. Everybody knows that it could churn, but nobody wants to call it out. So what you end up doing is you close the deal. 9 months later, horrendous implementation, product doesn't fit. We're trying to customize things. Oh, guess what? The customer churns, right? So I think answering that question early on and really getting that alignment, a lot of companies believe they have alignment, but they really don't. It has to be a meaningful discussion. It has to be a debate. It can turn into executives kind of, maybe not fighting, but really trying to get agree to disagree. You need to get that out of the way. If you don't, it's going to keep dragging forever and ever and ever. And you're going to have bad GRR. You're going to have a struggling NRR. You're going to be looking at your white space, wondering how we cannot sell to this white space and how can we not get to the expansion. I think it goes back to locking people in the room and getting that answer.
I love it. Rhiannon.
Amen to everything you just said. I think the one thing that all exec teams can universally agree on is this notion of trust and that being at the center of every major buying decision for a B2B buyer. And if we can agree that is fundamental to business success, then it should be a strategic imperative to identify plans, initiatives, and priorities that support trust building. So back to the example, Baris, you just gave of that whale opportunity that comes in. It's on the parties in that executive room, someone to raise a hand and say, if our strategic priority this quarter, this year is trust building, we know that this particular deal actually is in opposition to our strategic priorities in business. Ultimately, that churned client we burned trust with them naturally, but it also does brand damage in the market. That word will absolutely get around. So thinking about all the ways in which you build trust in the market through your customers, through trusted industry partners, through influencers like analysts and other objective third parties that are assessing market conditions and companies, and making strategic investments in that is probably not how most executive teams are operating and should be. And this is, I mentioned before, it ties back to brand. We know a lot of companies aren't investing in brand, and not everything that we've talked about here has a dollar value associated with it necessarily in terms of expenditures, but some of it will. And making sure that in executive team conversations, in the board conversations, you're tying back those investments to that top level strategic objective of building trust and justifying why 30 to 40% of your budget actually needs to be spent on activities that are not related to clicks and conversions and attribution on a spreadsheet. Super important.